Doctor Who has been around for a long time, so it has had a lot of anniversary specials. But, just like normal episodes of Doctor Who, there are sometimes story ideas that never get made. Today I'm going to talk about 5 proposed Doctor Who anniversary specials that never happened. Number 5. Deathworld. Before the 3 Doctors, writers Bob Baker and Dave Martin had a very different idea on how to celebrate the show's 10th anniversary. Their original idea, called Deathworld, saw the Time Lords in conflict with the Federation of Evil, led by a personification of death itself. To stop a potential war between the two, the Time Lords instead send all 3 incarnations of the Doctor to Deathworld, an underworld domain owned by the Federation of Evil that's constantly in limbo, to fight various representations of death. The result of these fights would determine whether the Time Lords or the Federation of Evil would win. The representations of death include the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, Polyphemus, zombies, and Kali. This evolved into the 3 Doctors when William Hartnell's wife, Heather, voiced concern over Hartnell's health, resulting in his role being reduced, and producer Barry Letts asking for the villain and location to be modified as Deathworld seemed too fantastical and lacked credibility, that it felt out of place. So various rewrites led to a story with only the basic skeleton of Deathworld remaining. The 6 Doctors. Script editor Eric Saward originally approached veteran Doctor Who writer and script editor Robert Holmes to write the 20th anniversary of Doctor Who. His idea was called The 6 Doctors. The story would start with all 5 Doctors and their companions arriving on the planet Maladoom. They're confused as none of them drove the TARDIS there, instead their TARDISes just brought them there with no command. They're then kidnapped by the Master, who's working for the Cybermen. They want to essentially dissect the Doctors and use their DNA to create Cyberlords so they can better withstand the time vortex and travel through time. Hear that, Chibnall? They're Cyberlords, not Cybermasters. Anyway, they eventually escape, but only to discover that the first Doctor and Susan are actually robot duplicates made by the Cybermen. Thus, the title, The 6 Doctors, and why they look a little different because of William Hartnell's passing. They destroy the robots, but then they find a third twist. The TARDISes that brought them there are actually the Master's TARDIS. It's acting out of control. It's not mentioned in my source why, but I'm assuming it's because there's 5 of it all in one place in time, and it threatens the universe itself. Luckily, the Doctors are able to deactivate it and save the universe and go back to their correct times and places. This story didn't happen because development on it was taking forever, so Eric Saward asked Terrence Dicks to prepare a backup script, The 5 Doctors. Robert Holmes withdrew his script, and a little more than a year later, The 5 Doctors was on screens across the world. Number 3. Destination Holocaust. When plans fell through to do a direct-to-video movie called Lost in the Dark Dimension for the 30th anniversary, which I'll make a whole video unto itself, it was decided that a short TV special would be made instead. The first story idea that David Roden came up with was Destination Holocaust. The plot goes as follows. The Doctor and the Brigadier are having a unit reunion when they see a Cybermen ship crash land nearby. As it turns out, the Cybermen have been tracking the Doctor, and now the Doctor and the Brigadier must fight them off in an abandoned church. This idea ended up being dismissed by producer John Nathan Turner on the grounds of it being too expensive. Though, even if that hadn't been the case, the fact that later on the requirements of it including every living Doctor and being a crossover with EastEnders probably would have hurt it anyways. Number 2. The Endgame. For a short period of time in 1993, it seemed that they wouldn't be able to produce Dimensions in Time because of issues with crossing over with EastEnders. A replacement was developed called The Endgame, in which the first 6 incarnations of the Doctor would be kidnapped by the Celestial Toymaker, who wants to convert them into more Toymakers. The 7th Doctor, with help from the Brigadier and unit, tracks down his TARDIS, which is hidden at a fun fair and guarded by Cybermen. They get the TARDIS, and the 7th Doctor and the Brigadier find the Toymaker. The Celestial Toymaker makes a deal with the Doctor that if he wins a game with him, he'll set his previous incarnations free. But if he loses, they all become Toymakers. The Brigadier ends up being the one that helps the Doctor win. The now free doctors all attack the Celestial Toymaker, and the Brigadier shoots him, which causes him to be sucked into the sphere device that he held the doctors in. The first doctors go back to their places in the time stream, and the seventh doctor and the Brigadier throw the sphere into a black hole. This didn't happen because, obviously, the issue was worked out and Dimensions in Time was made. What a shame. Number 1. Clara Saves the Universe. During the very early writing phase of The Day of the Doctor, Stephen Moffat was having a hard time because he didn't know who was going to be in it. He asked who was under contract to be in it, and the only name was Jenna Coleman, not even Matt Smith. So, Stephen Moffat came up with a story idea for just in case no one else signed on to be in it. In this story, which was kind of a worst-case scenario, would have seen the Doctor having been erased from existence after having stepped into his own timeline at the end of The Name of the Doctor. Clara, however, going through mundane life, starts to remember the Doctor a little bit, seeing him pop up in various fictitious forms and trying to remember him and bring him back into existence. Apparently, it would have seen the Doctor played by a bunch of different big-name celebrities, who would have presumably been written out of continuity at the end. This was, of course, scrapped when other actors signed on for the special. So that's it. I think it's definitely a good thing that almost all of these were worse alternatives to what we got rather than better ones. The obvious exceptions being the alternatives to Dimensions in Time, though. Anything is better than Dimensions in Time. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Bye.